Tonight, the King and the Queen fly to Sandringham. King Charles is seen for the first time since news of his cancer diagnosis is revealed and is visited by his son, Prince Harry. As the Church of England is accused of allowing asylum seekers to exploit the system, I'll speak to the bishop who says she makes no apology for helping people who are deeply vulnerable and traumatised. Liz Truss launches a brutal attack on Rishi Sunak's track record as a new group called Popular Conservatism is launched. I'll speak live to its director, Mark Littlewood. And we'll take a look at when politics gets a bit touchy-feely. All that and more with Daisy Cooper and Richard Tice, who will be with us for the next hour. It's Tuesday, I'm Sophy Ridge, live from Westminster, and this is the Politics Hub. Hello, good evening. King Charles III has been seen for the first time today since his cancer diagnosis. Queen Camilla by his side, leaving Buckingham Palace to travel by helicopter to Sandringham. Now, yesterday, the palace revealed that the King has started treatment for a form of cancer, we don't know which, discovered during an operation for a benign enlarged prostate. And like every other family in difficult times, you either pull together or apart. And today, Prince Harry came back to the UK to visit his father. I don't think it's any secret that the two have had a pretty strange relationship in recent years. He arrived alone from California and went straight to Clarence House to see his father. They didn't have long together, though, because the King is now headed to Sandringham. He's said to be as upbeat as possible following the diagnosis, perhaps unsurprising for a man with a reputation as a workaholic who's waited his whole life to be monarch. Well, here's Sky's royal correspondent Rhiannon Mills with our first report.
Less than 24 hours after his announcement, the King and Queen were briefly seen driving into Buckingham Palace, a helicopter waiting to temporarily get them away from London. Only hours earlier, Prince Harry was in one of these cars, landing back in London to see his father. The years of disagreements between the Sussexes and the rest of the royals meant a media scrum waiting at Clarence House as he was driven inside. For private time with the King, maybe a moment of reconciliation. Like any family, a cancer diagnosis will have hit them all hard.
The arrival of Harry is good news, it has to be. It didn't take long for us to be told he was coming, and it hasn't taken long for him to arrive. I think this is one of those cases where what are now minor grievances are set to one side and the big issue comes to the fore. This is a loving son who's come to see an ailing father.
The King's decision to be so open has drawn attention from around the world, even though the palace have said that there is nothing more to share, including refusing to confirm the Prime Minister's suggestion that it's been caught early.
Thankfully, this has been caught early, and now everyone will be wishing him that he gets the treatment that he needs and makes a full recovery.
Princess Anne was too far from the cameras to know if she said anything about her brother. A trip to Nottingham, one of 4 engagements already planned, including handing out honours at Windsor Castle. The extra attention on his family is inevitable, with doctors telling the King to leave the meeting and greeting to them.
He'll want to get up, he'll want to be moving, he'll want to be meeting people. That's where he gets his energy from. So to have this enforced sort of time away from his job, he won't be a very good patient.
Outside Buckingham Palace, the crowds had been impressed that he's been so candid.
You see these things, you kind of think they're impermeable and impervious to anything wrong going to them, and you realise they're human.
Yeah, quite shocked to hear it, but really good that he's really open about his diagnosis.
It's really brave for him to tell about this because there's lots of people out there as well who are suffering with cancer.
One thing that's been really striking since he became king is the way that people have wanted to get close to him, to shake his hand, in a way that we just didn't see with Queen Elizabeth II. So you can understand why the doctors are so cautious about him doing things like walkabouts. But that, in a way, poses its own problem for the palace, because if we don't see him out in public, how do they shut down that speculation and panic they're so keen to control? We wait to see how much they share in the coming weeks of the work that he's doing behind the scenes. A man who will only want to offer reassurance that he is still capable of carrying out his responsibilities as monarch wherever he is. Rhiannon Mills, Sky News at Buckingham Palace.
Well, the King's diagnosis has led to a lot of talk about people getting cancer in the UK and the outcomes, what happens to them after that as well. Sky's data and forensic correspondent Tom Cheshire joins us now to tell us more. Tom.
Well, the King's diagnosis is far from unusual. 1 in 2 people in the UK will develop some sort of cancer in their lifetime. Now, more than 336,000 people received treatment for cancer between December 2022 and November 2023. That's around 1,000 people per day, and it is the highest on record. And if you look at the number of urgent cancer referrals each month on this chart, there's been this huge surge all the way back from 2010 to where we are today with that dip in the pandemic. In fact, it has more than tripled, and that's good news because it increases the chances of catching cancer earlier and thus saving lives. But it does put pressure on the diagnostic system when the majority of referrals are not actually going to be cancer. So when it comes to that diagnosis and the treatment, in the UK, the 4 most common types of cancer are prostate cancer, breast cancer, lung cancer and bowel cancer. Now, age and gender are actually a huge factor here. And so this is what it looks like for male patients over 75 and over. That's the same age as the King. And you can see these are the various risks. Prostate is the biggest cause. Now, we do know that isn't the cancer that Charles has, but it is the most common. Then you have lung, bowel, colon and bladder. Now, some of these have different survival rates. Lung cancer, that is particularly grim, but bowel, colon and bladder, they're a bit more optimistic. And we know the King will be receiving the best care. And that's important too, because one of the things affecting survival is deprivation. People from the most deprived areas simply do not live as long as those from the wealthiest, even if they have the same disease. Take bladder cancer down here. You can see that nearly 6 in 10 in the least deprived areas, the most wealthy, they live for another 4 years. But even in the least deprived, that is less than half. So with his cancer diagnosis, the King is going through something that half his subjects will also deal with. But his subjects experience this in very different ways, depending on where they live, how long they have to wait for referral, diagnosis and treatment.
Thanks very much, Tom. Tom Cheshire there talking us through some of that data on cancer. Well, let's bring in our duo for tonight, shall we? We've got the Deputy Leader of the Liberal Democrats, that's Daisy Cooper, and the Leader of Reform UK, Richard Tice. Great to have you both on the programme. It was a real shock, wasn't it, yesterday when we got the news about King Charles III. Good to see him out and about, and of course his family coming together today as well, Daisy.
Yes, good to see him, and also I think it's incredibly refreshing and inspiring to see the King talk so publicly, both about his enlarged prostate, but also about separately his cancer diagnosis. I think the more people in public life, whether that's political or civic life, that can talk about these things, the more it encourages other people to come forward. And I hope very much that people in the country do come forward. But what I really personally want to see as the health and social care spokesperson for my party is the government to get a grip on the enormous waiting times that we're seeing currently for people who are waiting for diagnosis and treatment of cancer.
Yeah, the deprivation rates that Tom Cheshire was talking about there, really quite stark, aren't they?
Incredibly.
Survival, this life and death we're talking about as well.
And the benefit of the King sharing this information was it reminds people you've got to go and get checked up. So I booked him for my annual checkup today.
Did you? Was that inspired by
Basically, it was. I sort of had semi-forgotten in the nicest possible way when I'd last had one. And so that was absolutely was inspired by that. But I think the point is, it's the speed at which, from getting an initial diagnosis to being able to have results, scans and treatment. And I think that's where, sadly, at the moment, our outcomes are amongst the worst certainly in Europe.
Really interesting. And like you say, an important debate to have. And I guess just good to see us focusing on, some of those stories around cancer and how we can get better at treating something that is going to impact all of us, whether it's ourselves or people that we love as well. Thanks very much. We'll have lots more from Daisy and Richard this evening. Well, that story about the King is sure to be featuring in tomorrow's papers. We'll have our extended press preview and news review from 10:30 this evening with tonight's news and tomorrow's headlines. Joining us will be Sebastian Payne, director of the Onward think tank and the Observer's chief leader writer, that is Sonia Soja. That's coming up at 10:30 p.m. this evening. Well, now, should we go to the ongoing debates about the UK's creaking asylum system? It's been thrown into the spotlight over the last few days with the case of Abdul Azidi, who was granted asylum in the UK despite being convicted of sexual assaults and indecent exposure. Sky News understands he was allowed to stay after a priest testified that he'd converted to Christianity. He's now on the run, suspected of attacking a woman in South London with a corrosive substance, leaving her with life-changing injuries. There are also reports that 40 asylum seekers on the Bibi Stockholm barge now identify as Christian. The case raises serious questions about our asylum system and for the clergy who vouch for converts as well. We're joined now by the Right Reverend Dr. Guli Francis-Dehqani, who is the Bishop of Chelmsford. She came to the UK as a refugee, aged 13, in the aftermath of the Iranian Revolution. She was granted asylum there, and hopefully we should be able to speak to her now. I'm not completely sure if we have her, but so we'll go back to talk to our panel at the minute, shall we? We're just working on that, and hopefully we'll get the Bishop up later. Daisy, what are your reflections on, firstly, this specific case? Lots of people, of course, have been very concerned about the idea that someone who's convicted of a sex offence can then be granted asylum.
Yeah, I mean, it's a horrific case, and of course we're still trying to piece together what actually happened. I think what we've heard so far raises very serious questions about the criminal justice system and also raises questions about the Home Office system as well. So as I understand it from what I've read, this was an individual who had been given a conviction and had been given sentencing of less than 12 months, whereas Home Office guidance is that you get refused your application if it is more than 12 months. So I think there's very serious questions there to answer about sentencing and the criminal justice system. But at the same time, we're being told that somebody testified that he had converted to Christianity. It's not actually at all clear what the grounds were in the case as to when Azidi's asylum was granted. And it's not clear whether that testimony was in fact a decisive issue or whether in fact it was something else completely. So I think at the moment we really don't know enough about the actual individual case, but it does strike me that there are serious questions that do need to be asked, but we're really not quite clear yet precisely what those questions actually are.
Well, hopefully he'll be caught. That's the most important thing, as soon as possible. But secondly, as Daisy said, what is the Home Office doing? I mean, if you're convicted of, frankly, any criminal offence, and a sex offence is clearly way up there, the moment you finish that sentence, you should be immediately deported. No ifs, no buts. This is, frankly, it's not incompetent, it's grotesque negligence in the Home Office. I mean, in the normal world, people would be fired for that sort of negligence. And here we are, people are suffering and being injured, life-changing injuries, because of that negligence.
I feel like the case in Clapham, it's quite difficult to argue that this guy should be in the country, right? You know, he's been convicted of a sexual assault. He then obviously went on to have this awful attack on the woman and her 2 children as well. More widely, though, should Christianity be a factor? If you convert to Christianity, should that be a factor? And I know not necessarily the decisive factor in someone being granted asylum. What do you think, Daisy?
Well, I think somebody coming to this country when they've been persecuted for their religion in their home country clearly are grounds for claiming asylum in this country. I think in terms of whether somebody converts to any religion when they come here, it's entirely for the Home Office to decide what the rules are. I don't think we should be blaming the church. You know, I mean, I'm from St Albans. St Albans is a cathedral city. I know that our cathedral, in fact, also our mosques and our synagogues do extraordinary work in reaching out to vulnerable people in our community. Sometimes they're asylum seekers, sometimes they're people from low income, sometimes they're people who are struggling with their mental health or even with the cost of living. So I do think that our religious institutions play an important part in the fabric of our society. But I think if there is any scope that this is being exploited in any way, then it's really for the Home Office to act on that. I think we shouldn't be putting our attention on the religious institutions. The question is the Home Office running a system that isn't working? I think what the British public can see is that the Home Office has, generally speaking, lost complete control of our immigration and our asylum system. That's why Liberal Democrats keep saying we should be restoring the safe and legal routes so that people who have a genuine claim to come here can actually apply to come here safely. And then we need to crack down on the criminal gangs so that other people who are trafficked here don't suffer that.
What people don't want is abuse of the system. They want a fair, rapid, prompt interpretation of the rules. And I think everybody's concern here, based on the numbers we're hearing about, is that this is now seen as a sort of an open backdoor way into getting asylum if you convert to a different religion and you then say, I'll be persecuted back home if I've converted to in this case, Christianity. And the British public will not tolerate the system being abused and then bad decisions continuing to be made by the Home Office. And I think people are furious, absolutely furious at this.
OK. Interesting to hear both of your perspectives. Coming up on the Politics Hub, we hope to bring you the Bishop of Chelmsford after the break. Don't go away.
I'm Martha Kellner and I'm Sky's US correspondent based here in Los Angeles. We aim to be the best and the most trusted place for news.
I'm Martin Brunt and I'm Sky's crime correspondent. We take you to the heart of the stories that shape our world.
I'm Helen Ann Smith. I'm Sky's Asia correspondent and I'm based here in Beijing.
We help you understand the world with us. I'm Neville Lazarus and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. Alex Crawford joining us now from Ukraine.
Their personal possessions are all scattered around the place.
Our economics and data editor, Ed Conway, try and make sense of the big numbers for us.
Things can change incredibly quickly, and that's what they have done.
So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello, welcome back. Well, we've been talking about the asylum story and claims that people are using conversion to Christianity as a way to get their claims granted. Well, we're joined now by the Right Reverend Dr. Guli Francis-Dehqani, who is the Bishop of Chelmsford. She came to the UK as a refugee, aged 13, in the aftermath of the Iranian Revolution, and she was then granted asylum. I imagine you have a lot of sympathy for what asylum seekers are going through.
Yes, I certainly have a sense of the disconnect and the culture shock and the challenge, particularly after experiences that can be quite traumatic. I mean, I would compare my landing here as being relatively soft compared to what many people experience today. You know, it was over 40 years ago, so it was a completely different context. And we had family here and were able to settle. But even so, I have a deep sense of, profound sense of empathy with those who experience horrific journeys now to get here and then challenges once they're here as well.
I just wonder if you can understand the concerns among some that, you know, a minority of asylum seekers are effectively pretending to convert to Christianity to make it more likely that their claim is granted. You know, are you worried that the church, in some circumstances, is being used, I guess?
I mean, the first thing I want to say is that I absolutely accept, and I think most Christian leaders accept, that we can't simply have an open door policy. You know, we have to have systems that assess and vet whether someone's claim is a legitimate one, and those responsibilities fall with the Home Office and with the courts and so on. The question of Christian conversion is a really, really complex one. I would say that the guidelines that our clergy receive make quite clear that they should be very wise in making decisions. They should work over weeks and months and sometimes years with people to assess whether a conversion is genuine or not. And there may be a small number of cases where wool is pulled over people's eyes, as it were. I mean, it's impossible to have a system that's absolutely cast iron and foolproof. But I think we take seriously our responsibilities, and we absolutely don't make any promises that this is somehow a magic key that'll open up the asylum process for them. We know that it is one factor that's taken into account, and ultimately that decision lies with other people, not with those of us who are in the church.
Is it a bit of a cop-out, though, just to say it's just the Home Office, who makes the ultimate decision, and this is just, it's not really down to the church so much? Because, the testimony of church leaders obviously matters in lots of cases. We're talking about this because of the Clapham attacker. His third asylum claim was accepted after a priest vouched he converted to Christianity. And then, of course, we know that he then threw corrosive substance in a woman's face, threw a 3-year-old to the floor several times. The only thing that seems to have changed between those applications is the testimony from the priest, other than the sexual assault conviction, which I can't imagine was really something in the pro column.
This attack is a horrific one. And, I hope that this gentleman will be found quickly and brought to justice. There is no excuse for such behaviour. I would say that I think, on the whole, our clergy are very, very careful when they will offer supportive statements. So supportive statements are not given freely, even where people convert and are baptised. They're given in rare cases. But ultimately, the decision still lies with the courts and the Home Office. I would also just add that I think Christian leaders, certainly I'm aware of a number of bishops and dioceses who've worked with officials to try and help improve the understanding of faith-based persecution and Christian identity and conversion and of all of those things. So we want to work with the government, we want to work with the Home Office to improve understanding, and we've offered to work with the government on the development of returns policies, for example. We're not pulling in the opposite direction here. We have the same aims in mind, but I think to kind of look at a small case like this is to deflect from the real issue, which is that the asylum processing system is overburdened, it's inefficient, and it's struggling to cope. And we have to find ways of improving that rather than trying to point the blame elsewhere.
OK, thank you so much. It's been really interesting to talk to you and get your perspective on a very complex subject. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, staying with immigration, because yesterday the Prime Minister appeared to accept a £1,000 bet during an interview with Piers Morgan over whether flights to Rwanda would take off before a general election. And as you can see there, the Labour has turned the moment into a tack ad on social media. And the Prime Minister was asked about the moment when he appeared on the radio this morning.
Well, if I'm being totally honest, I'm not a betting person, and I was taken totally by surprise in the middle of that interview. And the point I was trying to get across...
Was it a mistake to shake his hand?
No, well, the point I was trying to get across, I said I was taken totally by surprise. The point I was trying to get across was actually about the Rwanda policy and about tackling illegal migration, because it's something I care deeply about. Obviously, people have strong views on this, and I just was underlying my absolute commitment to this policy and my desire to get it through Parliament, up and running, because I believe you need to have a deterrent.
Well, let's talk again to Daisy and Richard, shall we? Richard, what's your take on this? Are we all being a bit po-faced about it, or was it inappropriate for him to take the bet?
I think Piers Morgan essentially entrapped him at a moment, and he wanted to demonstrate confidence in a policy that we all know is ridiculous, is not a deterrent, is not going to happen, is waste unbelievable hundreds of millions of taxpayers' cash. And, yeah, he just didn't have the wherewithal to say, I'm not a betting man, but I'm confident it's going to work. That's obviously what he should have said. But look, I just think the whole thing is ridiculous. The columnage is wasted on this. And most importantly of all, the taxpayers' cash. And he's responsible.
Daisy.
I think it's appalling whichever way you look at it. I mean, the fact that he's prepared to take a bet when he's on a policy which is actually about people's lives, vulnerable people's lives, and sending them abroad for processing when some of these people are leaving, war and persecution, I think is appalling. But it also tells you quite a lot about Rishi Sunak, that actually he's prepared to place a bet for £1,000 without even thinking about it. And I think for a lot of people around the country right now, the idea of being able to just place a bet of £1,000 is pretty startling when they're not even sure where the money's going to come from to put food on the table.
I don't know what you think about this, but I can't help thinking that, when politicians get interviewed by Piers Morgan, they almost get sucked into kind of alpha bubble, It's like the kind of alpha male at school, and you're trying to keep up with him, and it's almost like a bit of a macho moment. What do you think that's what happened?
Well, it's interesting, actually, because I was on another channel, and one of the other panellists challenged me to...
Don't worry, you can say the name of the channel. We're very self-confident here. It's absolutely fine.
And actually, I did refuse it. I said, I'm not a betting man. And I think it was it was a sizable amount. I can't remember if it was 100 or 1,000. So, yeah, Daisy's right. I mean, he completely got it wrong, and for multiple reasons. But that's what Piers Morgan does. He's a very experienced, serious interviewer, and that's the challenge, isn't it, between interviewer and those of us who are being scrutinised.
I think it also shows, though, that you want leaders in this country that have instincts and that have good instincts. And it's not just this interview, is it? It's so many interviews that we've seen Rishi Sunak do. It's his engagement with people in the public. He's weak, he's out of touch, he's not really sure, he doesn't really understand the problems that people are facing day in, day out. And I think that with every single interview that Rishi Sunak does, he just looks completely out of touch with people and their everyday problems, whether it's the NHS, the cost of living or anything else.
There was actually a much more significant moment in the interview to do with the NHS when Piers Morgan talked about his mother being on a trolley in the corridor in the A&E for hours and hours. And the Prime Minister seemed to be... He was almost smirking. There was a smugness about his response that showed that he had no empathy, no understanding whatsoever. He either wasn't listening and was thinking about something else, or either way, actually, when people look back at it, you think, that's extraordinary, because it's an appalling story. There are hundreds of these appalling stories in hospitals every day of the week, and the Prime Minister was utterly oblivious to what's going on. I was really shocked when I saw it, really shocked.
And of course he admitted as well, not only did he had no response to Piers Morgan, and actually what was a really awful story, he didn't have any response, he didn't have any emotional response to it, but he then also was forced into a corner of finally admitting the NHS waiting list, which was one of his absolute key pledges, waiting lists would come down. He had finally admitted, actually, they're going up.
Not necessarily the headline that you wanted to come out of that interview, I'm sure. Thanks both very much. You betting, have a little flutter occasionally, either of you, or you...
Tenner on the horses, but that's probably it for me.
Maximum. You never see a poor bookmaker.
That's good advice. That is excellent advice. Still to come on the Politics Hub. Well, at the launch of the popular Conservative group today, the former Prime Minister Liz Truss told acolytes the country is full of people who agree with us but don't want to admit it, adding that she never gets invited to London dinner parties. How influential will the group be in determining the future of the Conservative Party? We'll debate. Hello, welcome back. Now, it takes a certain amount of self-confidence to launch a group called Popular Conservatism. And you'd need skin as thick as a rhino if you then decide to make Liz Truss the face of it. But that is what happened today, because today in Westminster, Liz Truss spoke at the launch of the Popular Conservatism events, alongside other figures from the right of the party, including Jacob Rees-Mogg and Lee Anderson. Now, they've dubbed themselves the Popcons, and it will be worth getting the popcorn ready, because this is yet another group fighting for the soul of the Conservative Party, along with the New Conservatives, the European Research Group, the Northern Research Group, the One Nations, the Common Sense Group, and the Conservative Growth Group. And it comes just weeks after the man in charge of the Conservative Party election strategy, Isaac Livido, reminded MPs that divided parties don't win elections. Well, that's going well then. Of course, I'm sure all of these groups would say they're just trying to help Rishi Sunak. They're just trying to point him in the right direction. They've got his best interests at heart. If you believe that, well, you'll believe anything. I'll be speaking live to Popular Conservatism's director in just a moment. But first, here's Sky's political editor, Beth Rigby.
Are you undermining the Prime Minister, Mrs Truss?
Rishi Sunak's old adversary.
Is the party united?
Liz Truss is back and bolder than ever. Here to launch a new political movement, the Popular Conservatives, in response to a current Tory leadership many here think are getting it very wrong, be it on the green agenda, trans issues, stopping small boats.
People want to see lower legal immigration. And we know that people want illegal immigrants deported. And I believe the fundamental issue is that Conservatives have not taken on the left-wing extremists.
Some of you might notice the irony of a very unpopular Prime Minister launching herself, reinventing herself as a leader of the Popular Conservatives. But while Liz Truss bombed in the country, in this room, her ideas and policies still carry weight, and the right is rallying. Once a cabinet member, Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg, now a popcon.
Ultimately, it's putting people back in charge. It's the whole underlying Conservative philosophy that the state grows up from the individual rather than the big state down.
But adamant this a battle for ideas and nothing personal to the PM.
It's definitely not an attack on him. I'm backing the Prime Minister. I want him to carry on, and Conservatives should support him. That we've had too many leadership campaigns, we don't want another one, and all Tories should back the Prime Minister.
But many Tories fear the popcons are only helping to fuel Nigel Farage and rival party Reform. Which party do you want to be in, Reform or Conservative?
Oh, Reform, no question about it. And I think at some point in time, a lot of the people here today will draw the same conclusion. And I honestly, I know it's only once every 100 years these things happen, but I do think we face the possibility that this could be the end of the road for the Conservative Party.
You're teaming up with the likes of Liz Truss and Jacob Rees-Mogg to take the Conservative Party further to the right.
I'm not teaming up with anybody. I'm here because I'm interested in ideas. You know, they can try as hard as they like to change the Conservative Party. I don't think they're going to succeed.
Many in this room have already written Rishi Sunak off. The Tory battle now all about who and what comes next. Beth Rigby, Sky News, Westminster.
Well, the former director of the Institute of Economic Affairs, now head of the Popular Development Partners Limited and Liz Truss ally, who's spearheading the popcon movement. Mark Littlewood is here. Good to see you. So what is popular conservatism?
Well, damn good question,
Thank
Sophie,
you.
Because I said in my opening statement today, putting the two words popular and conservatism together seems like a fool's errand with present public opinion. But I actually think conservatism can be popular if it's channelled in the right way. And we have to ask ourselves, why have things gone so badly wrong after 14 years of Conservative government? There have been some serious achievements, but broadly speaking, you wouldn't consider the country to be in a more conservative place now than it was 14 years ago. Tax is higher, not just higher, the highest since the 1940s. Government spending, the highest it's ever been, although public services don't seem to be much better. Debt and deficit spending seems to now be the norm. So how could this possibly have happened after 14 years of Conservative rule? Well, here's our answer. Unfortunately, all of the government machinery, the institutions of the United Kingdom, mitigate against the sorts of things Conservatives want. Lower taxes, a prosperous free market economy, economic growth, individual freedom. It's possible to achieve some of these things, but it's pushing water uphill. So I actually think we need big institutional reform, almost as a prerequisite to make some of those things possible.
I mean, you wouldn't be launching this group, I think it's fair to say, if you felt the Conservatives were heading in the right direction. Do you think Rishi Sunak is effectively taking the party to, electoral oblivion?
Well, I'm very... I heard from your guests earlier, neither Daisy Cooper nor Richard Tice said they were betting people. I am a betting person.
Okay.
But I
Put
see...
money on the Conservatives winning the next election?
Well, you know what? It depends what the odds are. I've seen many things ebb and flow. A few years ago, if you would bet on Donald Trump being elected president, so there's a chance. Now, the most important thing in the short term is not for me to speculate on what
Is Rishi Sunak doing a good job right now?
Yeah, I think he's doing an absolutely fine job in very difficult circumstances. And I could not have been clearer. I do not want him removed as Prime Minister.
You just want him to be a bit more like you? Is that the idea?
Well, that's generally the idea of politics, isn't it? That you put forward your arguments, you hope they're persuasive, and the people move towards them. So, of course, I want Rishi Sunak to be a bit more like me.
Now, you mentioned this really at the beginning of your answer. But, it's pretty punchy, branding yourselves as the popular Conservatives right now. And also some of the policies that people spoke about at your event, I just question how popular they are. Raising the legal smoking age, something that Lee Anderson spoke against. 49% strongly support, 8% strongly oppose. Leaving the ECHR. Less than a quarter of people think the UK should leave, according to polling by More in Common in August. 61% say that taxes on the rich are too low. Are you actually popular, the policies, or you just decided that you are?
No.
Where's your evidence?
This is a very fair point. And we're not calling ourselves popular Conservatives because we've done an opinion poll showing everybody agrees with Mark Littlewood. All of these polling numbers prove to me a point I've often believed in.
What, that your policies aren't very popular?
But actually, if you ask people on the spot price, socialism is really popular as a stated preference amongst the electorate. If you ask people whether taxes should go higher, the NHS should get more money, the state should do more to stop crime, all of those in an opinion poll are popular. Stated preferences, as an economist would call them. Revealed preferences, somewhat different. Virtually nobody volunteers to pay more tax than they're liable for, even though in an opinion poll they would say they would be willing to. Virtually nobody sends HMRC an additional £10 or £1,000 every year. It is known, but a tiny proportion of the population. Nearly all of Margaret Thatcher's reforms, different era, different time, were unpopular in contemplation, but then extraordinarily popular in effect. I don't think the sale of council houses.
What about Liz Truss? Think she's popular?
I don't think she's popular as a person, but I don't care about the personalities. I care about the ideas. OK,
well, let's talk about the ideas, shall we? Because this is the other thing, you ran the IEA, you got your candidate to be Prime Minister, Liz Truss, you backed her budget, and it was a disaster. She was the shortest-serving Prime Minister of all time. Okay. And now you launch a group called Popular Conservatism. I mean, genuinely, I would love to know where you get your self-confidence, because I want to buy some of it.
Great. Well, I'll bottle it up and sell it, because I'm a free market capitalist kind of guy, Sophie. Just to correct you on a few things, the IEA is an educational charity that Liz Truss visited a lot and buys into those ideas. I didn't speak to Liz Truss at any point while she was Prime Minister. She has a vision that's similar to that put forward by the IEA, but the IEA are not political operators.
She's part of your group, and you said her budget was, the Popular Conservative group. She spoke at your event.
Yeah.
And she was a disaster as Prime Minister because she was the shortest service one ever of all time.
On the IEA. Now, books and PhDs will be written. Some already have, about Liz Truss's 49 days in office and what went wrong.
Was it a success, do you think?
And no doubt...
Was it a success?
Definitely not. It's a diabolical failure for those who want to see free market reform. The interesting question is how much of that was down to Liz Truss making a misstep, not managing her party, pulling the wrong levers at the wrong time. Maybe you want to blame all of that on Liz Truss. Some of that blame might sit on Liz Truss. Or how much of it is, even if you had a free market, low tax, pro-growth, anti-regulation Prime Minister, might you find it's very, very difficult to do it anyway, even if they made none of the errors that Liz Truss made?
I've got a couple of other questions. So you set the Popular Development Partners Limited company up 26th October last year. You then registered the Popular Conservatism website on 14th of November. Are you all part of this alleged long-running plot against the Prime Minister? Is this it?
Again, without disclosing too much about my family, given my partner has left the IEA, I was leaving the IEA, I needed a vehicle, a company, in order to receive money and spend money, other than my own personal bank account and hers. That's why we set up that company. And the website is now owned by that company.
And where's the money coming from? Well, are you getting paid for this?
At the moment, none. It's a start-up operation.
Right.
I'm taking a huge gamble. I have moved from working for 14 years for an august and stable organisation like the IEA, where I know where my paycheck's coming from and PAYE's taken off the top, and now I've taken a huge gamble.
Well, you said you're a gambling man.
I am a gambling man. Let's see if this long odds bet pays off.
Talking about the future, would you describe it as a pro-Trump group?
No. I'm actually ambivalent about Trump. I think if you forced me personally to make a call on it, I probably would have preferred a different Republican candidate. It looks like he will prevail as the Republican candidate. If forced into a corner and I had to pick between Trump and Biden, I'd probably pick Trump, but I'd probably be closing my eyes and pinching my nose.
Fair enough.
I'd like a different form of republicanism, but I think he is going to prevail, and I think that speaks to a disillusionment in the American electorate, which is also true in the British electorate.
Talking about the British electorate, Nigel Farage was at the event today as a journalist rather than as a participant. Do you think he would be an asset to the Conservative Party?
I think it's rather difficult because he's obviously spent the last 10, 15 years of his life trying to destroy the Conservative Party, and I don't think you can immediately segue away from that or off that. I agree with Nigel Farage on a vast swathes of policy, but his view is that some new party, the Reform Party, it's doing quite well in the opinion polls, can suddenly emerge, and we just heard on the clip, and replace the Conservatives as the main party of the centre-right. He might be right, but generally over the last 100 years, if you'd bet on small parties suddenly reaching the sunlit uplands and busting through the two main parties that are established, you would have been placing a losing bet. So I think he's a fascinating character. I agree with him on a lot of stuff, but I'm not sure he's picked the right party. OK,
talk about the Conservative Party then. Perhaps a safer bet in those terms, despite the current polling. Who would you like to see as the future leader? Who's got it?
I don't know, really. I mean,
come on.
Well, I know you're going to press me on this point. I mean, again, as a betting man, I always say, although I'm not into horse racing, I always say to those who are, if you want to win the Grand National, you can't pick a single horse.
Go on, give me a name.
You need
who
about
would be
10
good?
horses in the race.
Who'd be good?
I suspect.
Can be bad or not?
I suspect it's probably going to be somebody you haven't considered yet.
OK, give me a name then.
Well, I haven't considered yet. Very usually, Conservative leaders are 50-1 shots about a year before they become Conservative leader. That includes David Cameron and Margaret Thatcher. So if you want to look down your betting slip, look at everybody who's 50-1 or longer and see who you fancy on that list. That's a disappointing answer, I will admit. Thank you for being on the programme very much, Mark Littlewood there. We'll hear what our guests, Richard Tice and Daisy Cooper, make of popcorn in just a moment. But first, I just want to bring you a little bit more from Liz Truss's speech. Here's her setting out what she means by left-wing extremists.
Now, these people have repurposed themselves. They don't admit they're socialists or communists anymore. They say they're environmentalists. They say that they're in favour of helping people across all communities. They are in favour of supporting LGBT people or groups of ethnic minorities. So they no longer admit that they are collectivists, but that is what their ideology is about. It's all about taking power away from people and families and giving power to the state or unaccountable bodies.
Right, let's bring in Daisy and Richard at Shell. I'm interested to get your thoughts on Liz Truss, also on the interview we had with Mark Littlewood. Are you a left-wing extremist then, Daisy, do you think, then, in Liz Truss's book?
I could certainly be called left-wing, but certainly not an extremist. Look, I think that lifelong Conservatives around the country will be looking on at that interview and this display from the popcorns today with absolute horror. You know, the entire country is talking about the crisis in our NHS. They're talking about the cost of living. They're talking about the fact that our environment is under attack. And all we have from Liz Truss, once again, is trying to stoke up culture wars. I mean, I just think it is extraordinary just how oblivious she and her colleagues are to the damage they've done to this country. You know, they blew a hole in the nation's finances. There are people around the country whose mortgage payments are going up. Council services are being slashed to the bone because of the impact of that budget. And she has the audacity to come out today and start blaming everybody else. I think it is extraordinary and shows an extraordinary amount of a lack of self-awareness.
It was interesting talking to Mark Littlewood there about Nigel Farage. He said, look, he agrees with lots of what he says, but he thinks that actually, if you look at history, small parties don't win. He'd be better off with the Conservatives. What do you think?
Well, that's why we need proportional representation in this country, because it's
something you two can agree on. One of the key things like that.
Which is actually the electoral system used across most of the developed world. Look, I think the clue's in the name. Popcorn, it's a bit like popcorn. Basically, it's a short-term release, it goes pop, and then it disappears. And frankly, I think that's what'll happen to this group, and I think that's what's happening to the toxic brand of the Conservative Party. I mean, all the things that we're hearing from lifelong Conservative voters is that this party, they're done with it, they're finished with it. The emails, the contacts we get is remarkable. I think things are changing. As Nigel said, this could be a 1 in a 100-year moment where actually there is a complete change in UK politics. And as part of...
the Labour Party winning the majority, not sure it's going to be reforms.
Where an existing party could essentially disappear down to very small size. And I think as part of that, I hear it on the doors, I suspect Daisy does, we need proportional representation. Another 3 million people, on average, based on other countries, would vote in this country if we had PR. That is serious.
I want to talk to you a little bit, both of you together, because, look, you've got the two established parties, the larger parties, Labour and the Conservatives, and it's a bit of a tussle, a bit of a scrap often between the Lib Dems and Reform. And Reform have overtaken the Lib Dems more recently, Daisy. Why do you think that is?
Well, I mean, I think, quite frankly, we're in a first-past-the-post system, and smaller parties have to make their way, in the airwaves sometimes. But what I can tell you about the Liberal Democrats is that when it comes to real elections and real votes and the way that people vote in those real elections, Liberal Democrats are doing really well. We've had those 4 absolutely stunning by-election wins over the last few years. We won more than 400 seats in the local elections, which was well over what was projected as our best-case scenario. So when you look at those real elections and real votes, it's the Liberal Democrats that are actually winning seats with the Conservatives.
Do you think the Post Office story has damaged the Lib Dems a bit in recent weeks? Because I couldn't help noticing that it feels like this sort of slight dip in polling might have coincided with the release of that documentary and claims, true or not, whether Davey had a role.
I think that the vast majority of the public were absolutely shocked at that story, and certainly looking at my post bag and from conversations on the doorstep, people want to see all politicians of all parties making sure that justice is served for these sub-postmasters. They deserve compensation and they deserve action to quash these convictions. I think, quite frankly, it is a devastating miscarriage of justice in terms of what's happened to the sub-postmasters. And I think people can see some of these attacks for what they were, right? And I think it is appalling that some Conservatives and some elements of the right-wing press did try to manipulate this story for political gain and exploit what is a devastating miscarriage of justice. The fact is there have been 16 Post Office ministers over the last 20 years, and I suspect that every single one of them has been lied to by the Post Office. And that's the situation we have. The British public want to see the Post Office held to account.
What concerns me most is that it seems to have gone very quiet. And I was calling, actually, that there should be immediate... I mean, you could pass a bill through the Houses of Parliament within a week to overturn all of them. And the other thing is, Fujitsu seem to be getting away yet again.
It's a big story, certainly. I think we can agree on that. Thank you both very much indeed. Still to come on the Politics Hub. Well, after Rishi Sunak and Sinn Féin's Michelle O'Neill hugged it out after the breakthrough on the stalwart stalemate, several of his backbenchers were left asking, what's wrong with the good old-fashioned handshake? Are they right or just a bit repressed? We're talking awkward political hugs. That's next.
Check this out.
Welcome to Sky Television. February 5th, 1989, the dawn of television's new age. And the most dramatic innovation in broadcasting since the launch of commercial television in Britain more than 3 decades ago.
Intergalactic.
It was great. It's like Star Wars. What do you think, Wilf?
As someone, I watch quite a lot of old TV footage, and this takes a biscuit and really stands out. And I have to say, happy birthday to everyone at Sky, obviously, but in particular, those that were there from the start, Kay, you in particular, of course, and the commitment and dedication that takes is quite impressive. So happy birthday, Kay.
It wasn't just me, Alex Crawford as well, Martin Brunt too. Now I'm listing people and I'm going to get in trouble because I'm going to miss some people out and that won't be very good at all. But who remembers where they were when this happened in 1997?
Diana, Princess of Wales, has in fact been killed in that car accident in Paris just a few hours ago. There had been extreme concern that Diana was very seriously injured when she was taken from the wreckage. There was a news blackout, to all intents and purposes, for a significant amount of time. Confirmation from the Interior Minister from Paris for a short time. And now there is confirmation that Diana, Princess of Wales, has died.
My producer was in my ear at the time and he said, just take a deep breath, look down and read what is on the wire service in front of you. I knew her a little bit because we used to go to the gym together. Right. So, yeah, it was quite the shock. This is 7/7, which was the bomb. London bombings. Do you remember on the London Underground? It was actually the day after the Olympics. So London, their celebrations for winning the 2012 Olympics was cut short after we saw 4 separate bombs.
I of course remember that, and I remember being at home when that story unravelled, and probably was watching Sky News as it happened, knowing that my brother was on the tube and you're desperately trying to find out where they are.
Hello and welcome back to the Politics Hub. Now, we've all been there. You meet someone, you stick out your hand and they go in for the full hug. Only slightly less embarrassing than the whole one kiss, two kiss dilemma. Now, that awkward political hug has had a long history, and after Rishi Sunak clutched Michelle O'Neill to his chest this week, we thought we'd bring you some of the more awkward embraces. If you're easily embarrassed, look away now.
Some perfect world we know we'll never find. So perhaps I should leave here.
Oh, it makes me cringe, I have to say. There's something about it. It just makes me cringe a little bit. You huggers, either of you?
Oh, I'm a big hugger. I love a hug. I'm probably too huggy, actually. But, you know, I think in a political setting, I stick to a handshake, probably.
Yeah, I think some of those, it's just not ideal, absolutely not ideal. But 2 kisses always, that's, you know, it's a very French thing to do, definitely.
Yeah, I don't know, though. I find the kissing thing, honestly, it just confuses me. I think I panic. 1, 2, 3 in France sometimes. It's just too much. And then you have, like, the awkwardness of
before I was
messing
perfect,
it up.
but,
you don't want to go to the wrong side first either.
Exactly.
But you never know. I mean, I was campaigning on Sunday and Lady rushed
Got that
out,
in there, well done.
And lovely lady rushed out and she gave me a great hug and it was fantastic. I thought, yeah, it's good Sunday morning.
What happened at the next doorstep?
2 doors down, lady opened the door, she looked at me, she gave me one look and she says, not a chance, and slammed the door.
Gotta happen. I guess it's the controversy with Sinn Féin as well, isn't it? You know, there's something about seeing Rishi Sunak hugging the Sinn Féin First Minister. Do you think it was a good move, bad move? Does it not really matter?
I mean, I wasn't there. I didn't see the video of it. I saw a photograph of it. I don't know what led up to it. I don't know what the conversation was. So it's quite hard to comment in that setting. I do think, generally speaking, in political situations, I think a handshake is probably all you need. But I don't want to be too judgy because I wasn't there. I didn't see it.
And you're a bit of a hugger anyway, so, you know.
Yeah, I'm not sure it was appropriate. I mean, we weren't there, but nevertheless, I mean, it was a very significant moment, but it's a very formal moment. And, you know, there's still lots of anxiety and division between those, you know, those political parties. So, yeah, I just, once again, I think the Prime Minister's just judged it wrong, got it wrong, not reading the room, reading the moment, frankly.
Yeah, there's a few moments that come to mind as well. I feel it's was it Jeremy Corbyn trying to high-five Emily Thornberry and ending up in it's just very awkward. No one needed to see that happening. And then the other one I'm thinking about is Donald Trump and Theresa May as well. That was very awkward.
It was.
Very awkward.
What was more awkward, was it the hug or the holding the hand, walking down the steps?
The holding the hand was pretty bad and didn't look at all equal and consensual.
That was
the
true,
thing,
wasn't it?
So I think at least that hug for the two people who were in it, for Rishi Sunak and Michelle O'Neill,
it was a consensual hug.
It looked like a consensual
hug, which
hug.
is what we're all about on the politics.
I think
very pro-consensual hugging.
Yeah, with Donald Trump and I think Theresa May, it did look kind of awkward. A little bit of a power dynamic there that I think we weren't particularly happy with in this country.
Don't worry, I'm not going to ask you to hug. It's fine. Absolutely fine. Don't think that'll go down very well, I'll be honest. Yeah, stick to the handshakes. Thank you both very much indeed. Well, that's it from us tonight. I'll see you tomorrow at 7 p.m. Up next, it is the UK Tonight with Sarah Jane Mee. See you tomorrow.